Okay, so we'll get started. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're gonna have some more people just coming in as the weight room fills up and people come by, but really appreciate it. So I'm super excited today to be joined by and interviewing Rebecca Perrin. Rebecca is a communications consultant who helps professionals become masterful in their career messaging and positioning for leadership. She has over 15 years of experience in marketing communications professional as a writer and an editor for some of Canada's leading publications, including the National Post, Toronto Star, Flair, Fashion Magazine, and CBC Life. She's got a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Media Studies, a life skills coaching certificate from George Brown, and a career brand management certificate from the State University of New York. She also runs a awesome program and on how to master your LinkedIn, how to get the most out of it, which we thought, given the digital world that we're all in, given the sort of new and even more important way to access and to recruit clients and build your personality and continue to build your brand online, this would be a really great guest to have on board. So thank you so much for joining us, Rebecca. I know that Ria might also pipe in today as well, because she's also a marketing expert, and this is slightly out of my depth, I'll be honest. But yeah, I'll let you sort of start and we'll kick into some questions. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. I'm one of the lucky ones who actually loves public speaking.
There you go. It's a good place to be.
Yes. So thank you for the introduction, James, and Ria for asking me to be here today. I am, very happy to be here and talking with all of you. And we're going to talk about LinkedIn in a way that is going to actually change your perspective on not just what to do with your LinkedIn profile, but to actually, how do you really use the true power of the platform to build and promote yourself within your business for the specific purpose of earning trust over time with your ideal clients and people who you really want to have, working with you and trusting you and giving you their money and investing you using communication strategies. So you're going to learn a lot about LinkedIn in terms of your profile. And then I'm going to talk to you a lot more on how to actually use LinkedIn, because the majority of professionals do the bare minimum. And that is largely because LinkedIn doesn't do as great of a job as Instagram and Facebook on educating users on all of the tools that they make available to their users. So LinkedIn has 600 million different users, but only 1 million people have used the LinkedIn publishing feature that they make available. So that's something that we're going to be talking about a lot today. And that is a huge advantage to the LinkedIn platform, because I think that, they've suffered their reputation a little bit, people thinking that it's the job searching platform, but really it is the social media platform for professionals. And the fact that it has a content management system baked into it is amazing. It's like having WordPress, but on LinkedIn. The way that people access LinkedIn, or, to look at people and find people on LinkedIn, is very different from Instagram, for example. So the majority of people who go to your LinkedIn profile ever are specifically looking for your profile. They're searching your name. They're not really, searching around through the algorithm to see who they come up with. They are intentionally going to find your profile, and usually for the purpose of buying into you. So finding the evidence that they need to pick up the phone and call you, write you an email, say, yes, this is the person that I want to work with. So there's a huge need for us to not only complete and optimize our LinkedIn profiles, but also provide them with some additional evidence that will ultimately inspire them to engage with you and therefore grow your business. So do you have any questions, James? Is that okay?
Yeah, I was just going to say, before we get into some of the questions that we had, I think from my perspective, it's definitely important, because I know a lot of it's hard having a website as an advisor. Some people at larger firms have them assigned to them. And so they're very sort of difficult to customize, or if so, it's within a very sort of stringent kind of layer, or you know, if you're managing your own, you got to pay for it. And I think that, you know, it's important that this is another way for people to build that brand online and to build that presence online with a lot more freedom. You know, you can control your LinkedIn much more. So I think it's just an important point to highlight what you're bringing up, because that's definitely something for people it's way easier to change, you know, posts on LinkedIn, share stuff than it is to make adjustments to your website. I know that very well from my own experience in our own business. But yeah, that's awesome.
That's actually that's one of the most important distinctions, and sorry to cut you off there, but so a lot of people think that their LinkedIn profile is about their job, but it's actually about your personal brand within the context of work. So for example, your headline isn't actually meant to be your job title. It should really be a value statement, like a headline on your website. It's meant to explain the value that you bring to people. And then a lot of people have a difficult time writing their summary, and I understand why. It's very, very difficult to write about ourselves. Oftentimes we don't have a very good perspective on who we are within the context of work. There's a whole bunch of, you know, reasons why, you know, our ego comes into play. We don't really want to come across as boastful or arrogant. And we don't really know what we're really supposed to put in our summary. And there's actually a lot of space to use. It's about 300 words long, or 2,000 characters in total. And I really encourage everybody to consider rewriting your LinkedIn summary, especially after this conversation today, to use as much of that space as possible, and to write it with it's a short story about who you are and what you do for work. It's not about your job. And I'm going to send you a resource after this that'll clarify what it is. But the reason why we want to use as much of that space as possible is for the algorithm and SEO and keyword seeding, very important, but also to appeal to the human reader. And so the person that comes to your LinkedIn profile, it's a great way to actually build some relatability with them.
Yeah, I think one of the things, questions, just to step back for a second on sort of a high level, I always like to think about, especially with platforms or you know, new concepts for people, or just a more specific concept. I think everybody understands LinkedIn, but a more specific context of how to leverage it is just like, what's our North Star when we're thinking about, like, what's our goal for using LinkedIn? I think, okay, from step back from like to a more robotic level of my work. And it's like, what is the function? What is LinkedIn as a tool for me? And when I'm doing stuff, for example, like writing my summary, like choosing what to post, like, how do I want to think about this? I know you touched on it, but I think it'd be good just to kind of be explicit as we kind of dive into everything.
So it's a bit of a roundabout answer, but when you think about your profile as a personal branding tool, again, it's not necessarily about what you do for work and it's about what you do for work, but it's not about the functions of your job. Mm-hmm. It's about your approach to work. And I often use this analogy for people. I want you to start considering your LinkedIn profile and your LinkedIn feed as your own personal media channel. So my answer to you about how to think about LinkedIn on a very high level is as your own media channel that you want to fill with programming that makes sense for your personal brand. So Oprah, her entire O network is content marketing for her personal brand. And the programming that she fills her feed with all makes sense for her personal brand. So with your business in mind, I want you to start thinking about how can I, share company updates or write articles or make my profile read in a way that makes people not only understand what it is that I do for work, but what it's like to work with me, and what type of articles do you want to share that will continually, feed your personal brand with evidence that you are engaged in your industry and you know what you're talking about.
Right. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think too is particularly important for advisors, just given that you are your own business to many extents, or your partner in a business, you've got a bigger practice, but that people are really going to come to you, and this is your way to differentiate in there. So that's a really great summary when it comes to that. And then from like what are you going to get back in return, or what's the sort of ultimate benefit to you for investing time in sort of building this? Is it clients? Is it differentiation? Is it servicing? Like, how would you want to think about, like, what's my benefit? We understand sort of the goal, and then what are we going to take back from that?
So I think it's a long-term communication tool, in terms of, this is not a platform for making a quick sale. It's really to earn trust with your clients and give them a place where you can direct them to, that, gives them enough reason to believe that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's, unlike Instagram, for example, Instagram, people are obsessed, or formerly were obsessed with engagement. You wanted a ton of likes, a ton of followers, etc. LinkedIn's not like that. Your goal is not to become Gary Vaynerchuk. It's not to become famous on LinkedIn. I think that, the expectation of social media was that in the past. Now it's really about creating a micro brand about what you do for work, publishing content in a way that considers your own newsfeed, et cetera. But it's really a long-term strategy and communication tool for you to develop trust with your clients.
Okay, cool. And when it comes to that, I pulled up some stats that I think it's interesting, that we pulled up just around sort of like who's on LinkedIn. 'Cause 600 million plus people, it's sort of massive. And they have some stats around sort of the types of people. So if you're thinking about, like, what's my audience, or is this for me? This could potentially help. It says that 38% of people are between 25 and 34 years old, 30% are 35 to 54, and 24% are 18 to 24. So I think it's really kind of getting into a lot of good client bases, client ranges for both prospective new clients. I'm talking about some of the sort of younger side to people who are, our clients for many years to come. And so I think from that perspective too, when you think about who's the potential audience out there, great way to access your clients, very, very high number of people being on it, many professionals and that type of stuff. So a lot of your messaging is going to be hitting potentially the right people. So when I'm thinking about sort of picking my hill, or picking my channel that I want to do, social media is difficult. It does take time. Is this sort of the one place to go? Is it this plus Twitter? Like, how do I think about it when I'm thinking, is LinkedIn where I'm going to sort of do everything, and if so, why is LinkedIn, do you think, the best for me or for an advisor?
Well, I'll tell you, so a lot of my work is, I write as a ghostwriter or private publisher for a number of executives across all industries. So I have, created content for executives at RBC, Scotiabank, Air Canada, McDonald's, L'Oreal. And the way that I write for these executives as their private publisher is creating original content on a monthly basis in a whole bunch of different capacities. And I'm just going to give you an idea of the types of articles that we write and why we do this. So we write articles about who they are as a person and the types of things that they care about. So speaking about core value things, which is a personal branding aspect. We talk about technological advancements at their company. We talk about corporate social responsibility initiatives that they care about. We share perspectives on industry innovations or changes. And this is what I mean by, we cover their industry like editors. So we're covering the news of their industry, and I write this original content for them for the purpose of positioning them as thought leaders within their industry and making sure that they are visible and actively engaged as business executives in their respective industries, so that they're top of mind. You're significantly more memorable when you are consistently speaking in a very professional and polished way about everything that's going on in your industry. So they do that for the purpose of reaching potential clients and leads, yes, because of the memorability factor, but also for peace of mind with their stakeholders, for being transparent and visible to their teams, and also their potential partners and everybody else who's involved. So it's really about being consistently visible, and doing whatever you can to create a good, solid reputation for yourself.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. And then when it comes down to the sort of which platform to pick, I mean, the stats here look pretty compelling when it comes to, people who are potentially investing, professionals with investable assets, something that could definitely be on LinkedIn. Is it sort of enough to do one, or is there an expectation to do everything? How would you recommend the approach to, just from a high level, to social media platforms that you want to pick?
Well, I personally think LinkedIn is the best, not just because of the fact that there's the content platform baked into it, but because that's where all of the decision makers are. I know that, from a B2B perspective, most people will pay more attention to LinkedIn, especially if you have a really polished profile. But I think, to answer your question earlier, Instagram is where people go to decide that they like you, and LinkedIn is where people go to decide that they trust you, and Twitter is where you're really supposed to use. It's like a news ticker. So it's more about company updates and, off the cuff remarks and that type of thing. But LinkedIn is where you can get significantly more in depth with your expertise.
Okay, that's a really good quote. I really like that. I think that's really, really kind of clarifying as to how you want to think a bit about it. One of the things is that when it comes to content on LinkedIn, one sort of original piece a month is probably okay. From a workload or lift perspective. What about, like, sort of, if you're trying to share something more often, advisors get access to tons of, economic updates and, webinars and all sorts of stuff from a lot of asset managers, plus their own firms, like, inundated with tons of content. Sharing other people's content, what do we think about that when it comes to, is that okay? Like, maybe I want to pick, one article I write a month, and then for the other 3 weeks of the month, I'll share, something important that I pick up from the week. I mean, is that something you recommend?
Yeah, and actually I've built a framework around this because I think it's important to be consistent. And so, to be consistent, what I advise is that at the beginning of every month, first week, you write an original piece of content about one of those things that, those article ideas that I mentioned earlier. And then in week 2, 3, and 4, you support it with third-party content or content that's been published by other people. So really, you create an argument at the beginning of the month, and then you support it with third-party content that backs up your idea that you wrote about in week 1. So
that's awesome. That's a great idea.
It's just really smart.
Nothing else you could say.
Sorry, it's really smart.
Yeah, I'll tip my hat to that. That makes a lot of sense. So you're looking at 12 topics a year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you could almost go write your thing with the references that write your article with your references or whatnot. And then you're posting the 3 weeks extra of references. And that's kind of how you do that. So, and then if you're looking for more of the economic update, that's probably more the Twitter fast moving stuff. And that's probably harder that's more technical, I guess, is the way you want to think about it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Anything else on messaging? Just because I do want to keep digging into sort of the different aspects of it. But when it comes to messaging, obviously, just to reference what you said earlier, this is probably something you do through the LinkedIn publisher. Should we talk a little bit about that before we talk a bit more about sort of profile and that type of stuff?
Like about the type of messages that you'd want to send, or?
Yeah, more like anything else on messaging sort of before we move on.
I guess the only thing that I could add, and it's also quite strategic way of thinking about how you actually plan out a content strategy on LinkedIn. So if we're publishing 12 articles a year, what I want you to start thinking about is having 4 topics of 3 articles each, and thinking about the sales cycle and how you really want to lead people down a path to discovery to actually start investing money with you. Mm-hmm. So you start soft, right, with the personal branding, who I am, what I care about, my core values. And then you start moving into what you know and what you find interesting and building your credibility. And so that would be the second step in the sales cycle. The third step would be getting really educational, sharing very important educational information that you know will help the people that you want to talk to. And then in the fourth stage, towards the end of your communication strategy, you start making offers. So that's even, thinking about it at a very high level.
And then, yeah, so that makes a ton of sense. You're trying to sort of introduce yourself. And is that over time? And then do you repeat that cycle? Like, how do you?
Every year. It's like an annual communication strategy, and you repeat it. And your news is always different because the news always changes. So when you start covering your business like an editor-in-chief, you have new content every year, but the framework for your communication strategy is always the same. First quarter, soft personal stuff. Second quarter, credibility stuff. Third quarter, educational stuff. Fourth quarter, selling stuff.
That's a really neat way. And when it comes just from the high level, I think the first few are relatively, story, and then you're kind of going in education. I think, tons of resources for advisors around that. When it comes down to selling, is it sort of contact me today? Like, how do you sort of, when we're talking about that type of crafting, like, how do you start to turn it into that? Because I think that's part of the piece that, certainly I, as a now much more heavy LinkedIn user, haven't really thought about. I'm more sort of like sharing this type of info, but how am I going to shift that focus? How would an advisor shift that focus to sort of try and actually sell?
It's a difficult balance to strike. And to be fair, that's difficult. And it's what I happen to be quite good at, because you really have to figure out how to marry business journalism with content marketing. So it's getting people, whatever your sale is, like, you're not really asking people for, their investments over LinkedIn, but you are asking them to get on a call with you. You are asking them to book a meeting with you. And so that's the way that you start to actually use content to work. So there's this, obviously, a strategic element to writing a call to action, but you've spent all of this time, with being a soft sales expert by, building your credibility and being an educational person and working on your personal brand, so that by the time you get to that phase, the call to action is actually quite welcome. It's like asking to sale after you've warmed up your market. And
probably a good thing too, as you're going through your meeting with people, as it gets back more to sort of in person and you run into somebody, it could be a good thing. Hey, look, if you want to learn a bit more, like, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You're going to get a really good understanding of me and sort of what we're all about. And that's kind of another, like, soft call to action. Follow me on LinkedIn is ways to come by my office or something else. Much less it's personal, but it's much less. And then it's like another potential soft selling skill you can use when you're kind of going through your day to day.
Well, that's a really important point, because creating the content is one piece, right? But distributing the content is the second piece. So I don't actually expect that you write all of these articles and then just leave them on your profile to live. I really work with my clients to coach them on how to actually deliver the content to the people who they want to make sure are reading it. So sometimes that's through email marketing. Sometimes that's through an internal client relationship management software. Sometimes that's through Medium or another social media platform. But really, writing the content and publishing it to your feed is half of the battle. The second half is actually making sure that you are getting it into the hands of people who you really want to read it. And when you think about distribution strategy, I was thinking about this earlier today, just to another analogy or an example that clarifies. So sports aren't happening right now. Everybody's devastated. You can think about how strategic it was for the NBA to distribute the Last Dance documentary on Netflix right now. They're making sure that people remember how much they love basketball in the NBA. Same thing with the Formula One documentary series, the FC Barcelona documentary series. They're giving people sports when sports aren't really available. So there's a very, very serious strategic piece behind content distribution.
That makes a lot of sense too. I hadn't thought about that. So that's why I'm interviewing you, not the other way around.
I think a lot about it.
That's awesome. That's cool. So then, okay, we've covered off, sort of channel, your communication strategy, that type of stuff. I will just do a quick call out too, that if people do have questions coming through, please just throw it into chat, either to Ria or to everyone, and we'll make sure we address those. But I definitely have more. But I'm thinking, strategy from that perspective. I don't want to dig too much into your course. I have an incredible course on this, which goes through it in detail and a lot about really how to do this at a very detailed level that gets into the real strategy of it. But if we're talking now about, that's sort of the messaging, that's the strategy on messaging, the cadence of how often you want to do that. Now we're looking at, okay, somebody searched me up on LinkedIn, they're starting to look at my profile. Without getting too much into to the course, what are some of the best practices when it comes into writing your profile? Probably the worst thing is having the stock header, and maybe starting and walking through there. Would love to kind of get some thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share everything, that I know. And this is all hot take information. And of course I can give you greater detail. And as I said, there's a link there that I will send everybody, a resource that I wrote. It's LinkedIn Profile Pro, and it will literally take you top to bottom through everything with your LinkedIn profile, just that you know how to do it. Your headline, as I said, there's 3 different ways to write it. So one is a value statement, one is keywords only, and then the other one is to define your career niche. And I think that one's actually a really important one for your industry, because you want to clarify the fact that you are investment advisors in a different way, in a fresh way, in a modern way. So I think, using that career defining niche statement is a great option for everybody who's on the call. That matters. As you mentioned, your profile photo and your background image matter a lot. A lot of people leave the background image out. This is your visual communication. So it's really important, obviously, to have an aesthetically pleasing profile when people get there. But what I think is more important are some of the recent resources or tools that LinkedIn has added. They now have a featured content section, so that you can actually feature a lot of the articles that you will eventually publish on your profile. And it's like a news ticker below your summary, but it doesn't have to just be your original content. You can share links to other, posts or articles that you find interesting, YouTube, whatever. You can post links to some of your company updates or status updates. But what you want to do there is take advantage of that news ticker, because it will highlight the stuff that you're paying attention to in your industry. And that's a really, really great way to add a lot of meat to your profile. Mm-hmm. The experience section, everybody does wrong. It is not meant to be a copy and paste from your resume. Nobody cares to see your resume on your LinkedIn profile. That should be a very, very short micro story about the results you created or the impact you had in your previous positions. So I want you to think of your LinkedIn profile less as a resume and significantly more as a marketing tool. And we are trying to sell you in every single aspect of your LinkedIn profile. So the experience section, your headline, again, not your job title. It's the same as the headline at the top of your LinkedIn profile. It's an impact statement about what you did, how you did it, and the results you created while you were there. And then I actually think next to the summary, the most important piece of your LinkedIn profile are the recommendations that you have. It's a bit of a process to get recommendations, but I do recommend to my clients that you have at least one new recommendation every month. Mm-hmm. And recommendations are testimonials. So you ultimately need to do a bit of pre-work before you get a recommendation on your profile, because you actually have to request that somebody gives you a recommendation. And the way that I think about this strategically is to write somebody an email, send them a voice note, whatever, and just say, would you be interested in giving me a recommendation on my LinkedIn profile, particularly if you could speak to this project and what you felt my value was, or how I helped you best in that situation. I really want you to start thinking about how you can control the messaging in the recommendations that are on your profile.
I think that's a really good point. I think it's actually going to be a very good opportunity for advisors here. Advisors have many clients. If you had a really good conversation with somebody recently, and somebody has, really said they really appreciate you, say, hey, look, it'd be great if you could write that on LinkedIn. I can send you the recommendation. People are able to kind of ease that in as a potential ask or a way to stay in touch with your clients and also hear from them. And I think it's true. I don't know if I know the function well, but you can accept or deny them, or you can rewrite them. So if somebody writes you one too, it's not like, a Yelp where they're just there. You can pick and choose.
That's right. And sometimes, and in fact, I think it's more common than not that I'll write recommendations and send them to people and say, would you be comfortable posting this? And then they're like, yeah. And because a lot of the time you want to make it convenient for people. They don't have time to sit down and think about how am I going to write everything? It's to save them time and effort. If you send them the recommendation that you would like on your profile, they'll just happily copy and paste it into LinkedIn for you.
Yeah, it's awesome. You always make it easy to have people do you a favor, for sure.
Yeah.
That's good. And when you think about it from that perspective, if you have potentially a niche of clients you're looking after, I've definitely seen some LinkedIn profiles of some of the advisors that are using our software who who have had that and go after a potential niche. And they've listed that out as their sort of value statement instead of their necessarily their title. But I think you have that, and you have some potential people in that target group who you can write recommendations and have them the recommendations for. That makes sense then. If you think going back to that sort of North Star about that sort of communication, that content channel, career branding, that type of idea, you're really building a nice, consistent narrative. And I really like the thing you said earlier around LinkedIn is where people sort of go to trust you, and you're trying to do that. So everything you're saying is really reinforcing that with, this is like, if you fit within the target that I'm going after, if that happens to be the type of advisor you are, that you're able to sort of, oh, hey, I sound like that. And then look, all these people that sound like me have similar backgrounds to me, have given this person really good reviews. You're sort of really building that story for them. And then if you're sharing content that's on brand as well, you can really see how that could lead to some.
Yeah, you're totally seeing the vision for how this is a holistic communication strategy for your business. And the entire purpose, to your point, is to establish and really build trust with the people who you want to work more with.
Yeah, it's so much easier too, sorry to interrupt, than a website or anything like that, where it's like, it's formatted for you. They make it easy. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And aside from picking the picture at the top, I think it's going to be hard for some people. I have found that a challenge in the past, but you don't have to think about it too much as far as, how do I be creative or artistic here? It's just, let's get this out here and keep going down my narrative, and they're going to give you the medium to do that.
That's right. And so when you have a first person bio that is well written and sort of is your statement that you give out to the world, that's a great piece. That's you to the world saying, this is who I am. This is the work that I do. This is who I help. And this is my perspective on on my industry and whatever. This is who I am within the context of work. And then you have all of your credentials, your previous work experience backing you up, proving that you know what you're talking about. And then you've got your content that shares your perspective and builds your personal brand and helps people build relatability with you. It's really about that likability factor. And likability is of course huge for establishing trust and relationship-based sales, all of that sort of stuff. And then you've got recommendations from people who are happy to vouch for you and say that it's a pleasure working with you. You delivered them lots of results. You're great to be around. And it's really about that relationship building, trust building, communication strategy.
And then when it comes to experience, I know you touched on it a little bit, but when it comes to sort of job experience, I mean, is it enough just to have the title and nothing there? Do you want to talk about it to any extent? Like, what's the sort of comes to that? Because you're shrinking that portion of it. Like it's more of a, qualifications. And I think it's important for this group because you can get a ton of qualifications as an advisor and in this industry. Certifications, there's many of them, and those are very relevant. Your past job history isn't going to be quite as relevant. So what would you recommend with regards to, say I get a new certification, certified financial planner, certified investment manager, something like that, or I already have that. How do I want to leverage that? I mean, I'm probably minimizing how many years I've been at the firm, potentially, or that I was a wardrobe consultant for Moores in high school. But now I'm looking, which is true. Now I'm looking at, and I loved it. Now I'm looking more at this sort of relevance. How do I want to position that too?
So it's very strategic. This is where I want you to think like an editor. So I want you to pick and choose the information that backs up the claim we're making on your profile best. I'm not putting on my profile all of the various jobs that I've had. You're not going to put Moores on there. It just doesn't make sense. We're really looking for the past 5 to 7 years of work experience that best contribute to the story that we're trying to tell on your LinkedIn profile. And you can leave the rest out and it can come up in conversation if somebody asks. It doesn't really matter. So if you get a new accreditation and you get a digital certification, something that says you've got this new designation, that's something that you can put in your featured content section. And then if you want to add it to your summary, you can do that. But really, you can upload that to your featured content, or you can add it to your experience section if you want. I think it's important to have all of your credentials on your profile because it really obviously it elevates your personal brand, it elevates your credibility factor. You just want to think strategically about where you put it, and that can be, you know, in your summary and your content, feature content.
I'm not sure if I'm the only person who's got like the social media version of feeling like you left the oven on.
Sorry, yeah.
I gotta go back and take Moors out of there.
Yeah, well, you know what? I work on I worked on a dean at a business school last week. I did their profile. And we have to think very strategically about all of the academic work they've done, all of the workshops that they've, you know, conducted, all of their industry experience, and really think about what's the most powerful information that we can put on your profile.
That's awesome.
And then your personal website can be, you know, it can be a nice library for the rest of the stuff that didn't make it on your LinkedIn profile, if somebody wants to do deeper research.
Fair enough. And then when it comes to, yeah, I think that's an awesome overview of, you know, channel communication, the profile, when somebody gets there, your sort of landing page, so to speak. And then it comes to engaging with others. So great question would be, you know, how do I create engagement on a post that I want to make for a beginner? What's some of the like very basic strategies I can use to try to get people to be interested in it, to maybe like it or react to it? You know, is that my goal when it comes to posting? Like, how do I want to think about posts too, and whether or not I know my posts are resonating?
Yes and no. Engagement, yes, it's fine. It's nice to have if you're looking to, you know, network on your LinkedIn profile and meet new people. Yes, of course, you want to create some engagement. Whenever you're sharing an article, let's say you're sharing something from Harvard Business Review and you've read the article, what I want you to do is when you're, you know, writing the caption for why you're sharing this article is think about what are the key takeaways that I learned from this article? What information do I think other people will want to know best? What's my perspective on this article? Maybe you didn't like it. Maybe there was something in there that you thought was controversial. I think it's very important to focus all the time on adding your perspective to something that you're sharing, because it gives people something to respond to. And that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And then I think there's one more thing that is a bit of a faux pas that I see a lot of people doing, which is being boastful. And I think that this is one of the most unattractive qualities about LinkedIn, is that people, you know, just share an update about how awesome they are, something awesome that they've done, how cool they are. And it's just not a very elegant way to approach your personal brand. So rather than being boastful, I want you to start thinking about how can I explain my process for how I achieved this? Thinking much more about thought leadership rather than, you know, being self-congratulatory. And I think that sharing your process, educating people, offering some interesting insights, sharing your perspective is just a really nice way to be a professional thought leader.
Like if you did a marathon or something like that, a real awesome achievement, one way might be to think about it is to talk about how, you know, just like training for this marathon, it's how you can potentially think about investments longer term. You know, it's going to be hard. Some days are going to be better than others. You know, trying to maybe like make it less about like, yes, I did this great thing, but that's not the main point. You're trying to
kind of talk about a barrier to your success and how you overcame the barrier to success. Yeah.
No, that's cool. That's really neat. Yeah. So then if I see somebody, with just a couple more questions, then I think we're in a good spot. But if I see somebody, you know, I ran into them, you know, and they wanted to connect or we connected on LinkedIn and they accepted my sort of, hey, follow me on LinkedIn, you can learn a bit more about me. And I see them starting to post. How do I want to try to engage with people, with others that are potentially like prospective clients, in a way that's not too salesy, but in a way that might sort of get them to maybe engage with my content more, come and view my profile again. How do I want to, is there a way to use it to kind of hook people and bring them in? And if so, what's my general strategy for that?
Yeah, you're playing the long game. So it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You want to make sure that you keep an eye on them. So sometimes I talk to my clients about having a dream 100 or a dream 10 group of people who you really want to be your clients in the future, and literally creating a list of them that you keep close to your computer. And, you know, once, twice, 3 times a week, you go onto your LinkedIn profile, see what they've been up to. If they've posted something, you leave a meaningful comment and you engage with them. And this is like a Hansel and Gretel strategy, but you are literally, you know, leaving breadcrumbs for them that keeps you top of mind. And then basically they're in your wheelhouse for when it's time for them to actually start thinking of you as an investment advisor.
No, it makes a ton of sense. That's awesome. I guess a couple of things, which would be great just to cover off. So if I'm looking to learn more and dig into this, obviously, you one of the reasons we really want to get you on board is because you do run a course about this that's kind of in more detail. We'd love to get a really quick overview for those who might be interested, just to learn a little bit more, and some of the sort of taking a lot of what we learned today and probably applying it in a more detailed fashion with some more detailed strategy.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So I have 3 options that I'll tell you about. One is the online course. It's a self-directed communication and PR course called Love Your LinkedIn. Inside that course, you'll learn all of the career branding things that are necessary. It's like doing the research and laying the foundation for building your LinkedIn strategy over time. Then you learn how to completely write and optimize your profile top to bottom for the algorithm, but also for the human reader. And then I also teach you all of the PR and communication strategies that we're talking about today, and they're audio lessons, video lessons, and workbooks. So it's totally self-directed. And then a lot of my clients really don't want to do all of this on their own. And they also don't want to do their writing. So I have 2 turnkey LinkedIn marketing programs that I offer companies and individuals. And both of those include personalized LinkedIn marketing strategies, the profile, a content marketing plan, and article writing as well. And I build your entire editorial calendar for you for the year. So that entire piece that we were talking about, you have 2 options. Either I can give you the articles and tell you when to publish them, like the article ideas, or you can just say, Rebecca, can you please write all of this for me and do it? That's what I'll do. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
I'm sure people are going to see changes to my LinkedIn soon.
Yeah. Good.
And wonder why.
Well, I'm going to have a look right after this call, obviously, because now I'm nervous that I've got more is on your profile.
I'm going to scrambling. I'll shut it off before we get there.
Okay.
We're going to race. Well, look, thank you so much. If there are no other questions that are coming through via the chat, really appreciate everybody being on. As a really quick thing, just as people are starting to peel off, we will be starting to do these every 2 weeks now, just to kind of keep it going. So really appreciate you coming on, Rebecca, though. This is great. And, look forward to we always get great feedback on this. I'm sure we're going to get a ton of feedback from this one too. I think it was really, really useful. And, I'm going to go remove my Moore's experience. Just before we go to the webpage for the resource, is that in the chat right now? I just want to make sure we get that.
It is. It should be the first comment in the chat. And I'll send you guys the LinkedIn Profile Pro I was talking to you about earlier. I'll just send, and I'm going to send it personally. I don't have an automated marketing thing, so I'll send you a personal note if you want that.
Perfect. Yeah. And